How do required minimum distributions work when you have multiple IRA accounts? What about 401ks, multiple 403bs? I've got that and more coming up. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm the host of The Wise Money Show. I'm also one of the certified financial planners right here at Korhorn Financial Group. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. We're in video 4 of our mini-series on required minimum distributions and all the planning that comes along with it. We're into the strategies, and this one is fairly common, and that is, how does required minimum distribution work when you have multiple retirement accounts, when you have maybe multiple IRAs, or maybe have an IRA and an old 401k, 403b, something like that. This is an area that creates a lot of confusion and requires a lot of planning. So before I get into the rules, let me first just state the importance of simplicity in your overall financial life, especially when we're talking about ages where RMD would apply, age 73 or age 75 and beyond. If you have multiple IRAs that you could consolidate into one to simplify your financial life, good riddance. It likely makes sense for you to do so. Or if you have old retirement accounts from old employers that you're no longer working with, consolidating those into IRAs may make a lot of sense. So work with your certified financial planner. Hopefully you're getting the right clarity and confidence and creative strategies from your CFP. That's really their job, providing those 3 C's. When they do that effectively, it creates calm in your overall financial life. And through that, woven through that, through those goals, accomplishing those goals, is making sure that there's simplicity, as much simplicity as possible, but not any more, to your overall financial life. Consolidating retirement accounts, especially at required minimum distribution age, is one of those things. All right, so how do the rules work when you have multiple IRAs or multiple accounts where you need to take a required minimum distribution? Well, let's start with IRAs. Those are the easiest. If you have multiple IRAs, do you need to calculate your RMD on each different IRA and take just that RMD from each IRA? No. Your IRAs can actually be aggregated all together. You can sum up your entire IRA balance on 12/31. You can calculate the total amount of RMD that you need to take out. And if you have 3 different IRAs or 5 different IRAs, you can take all of your RMD from just one. Or you could take a chunk from one, a chunk from another, as long as the total amount that you've taken out from all of your IRAs is at or exceeds the total amount of the required minimum distribution for each of those IRAs together. All right, so let's take the example. Maybe you've simplified your financial life down to 2 IRAs. You've got one IRA where maybe these are dollars that you'd rolled over from a whole bunch of other retirement accounts while you were working, and these are the dollars that you've invested for the long term. And so they're invested maybe in a 60-40 type of model. You've got some other strategies in there, but those dollars are intended to grow and move up and down, but grow for the long term. Then you've got another IRA that you've siphoned off for whatever reason. It's a separate account. And these are the dollars that are in very, very low risk investments, because these are the dollars that you're drawing from. Maybe they're in fixed interest type of investments or what have you, where they're liquid, but they're also they're not taking a lot of risk, so there's not a lot of variation. And that's appropriate, maybe appropriate when you're in retirement. The RMD rules would be that you need to calculate your RMD on both of the IRAs, but then you can take the entire amount, that aggregate amount, that combined amount, just from the one account that's invested low risk and where you're drawing dollars out from. So say between the 2 IRAs, you've got $20,000 that you're required to withdraw from your IRA. You can draw all $20,000 from that one IRA that you have structured for lower risk, and that's the account that you're drawing dollars from. I get this question from time to time. Well, if the IRAs can be aggregated, can I aggregate them with my spouse? So if I have an IRA, my spouse has an IRA, can we just take our entire RMD from just one of ours? No. This is an RMD is an individual requirement, meaning even though you are married and even though you and your spouse have similar types of accounts or both IRAs, you would each be required to take in a required minimum distribution from your own IRAs. All right, going beyond IRAs, it gets a little bit more complicated if you have old 401ks, 403bs, those sorts of things. For 403bs, those work similarly to IRAs, and you can aggregate all of your 403bs together, calculating the RMD on each old 403b that you have, but then you can take the aggregate, the entire amount, out of just one 403b or a couple 403bs. You don't have to take out each one. But you wouldn't be able to take out your required minimum distribution for your 403bs. You wouldn't be able to take that out of your IRA. It would still need to come out of your 403b. Now that's a unique rule for 403bs. What about 401ks, which are much more common, or 457 plans or other types of plans? No, those if you have multiple, you have to take the required minimum amount from each of the accounts. So if you have 3 old 401ks, which I'm shaking my head at that because you shouldn't. You should simplify. You should consolidate. Those should go into IRAs. But if you happen to have 3 old 401ks, you actually would need to calculate the RMD for each of those 401ks and withdraw each RMD separately from each of those 401k accounts. Therefore, again, I'll go back to the simplicity that, I mean, imagine if you had a couple IRAs, you've got an old 403b, you've got a couple old 401ks. Imagine the complexity now and all the RMDs that you need to calculate and manage and figure out the withholdings and which investments you should draw from within each of those accounts. So, and as often as you can, simplifying your accounts. But that's how it works if you have multiple IRAs, which is fairly common, or multiple 403bs, which is not very common, or multiple 401ks. Now, lastly, what if you have an inherited IRA? I told you you could aggregate your IRAs together and just draw your RMD out of one. Does that apply for an inherited account? No, it doesn't. Inherited IRAs are treated as separate IRAs that have their own unique calculation for RMD. Going back to how you calculate your RMD, one of those tables, the single life expectancy, that's the one that you use for calculating your RMD on an inherited account from a non-spouse. And that one has to be taken separately from your inherited IRA. While we're talking about inherited accounts, let me just speak to that for just a second. Back before the Secure Act 1.0, so from if someone passed away and you inherited an IRA from someone that wasn't your spouse, before 1/1 of 2020, then you had the ability to calculate a required minimum distribution on that IRA, on that inherited account, and you had to withdraw that required amount out every single year, but you wouldn't need to withdraw out any more than that. This was deemed the stretch IRA because you could calculate this minimum amount out of that inherited IRA that say you inherited from your folks or something like that, and withdraw that minimum amount out, and you can draw that and extend the life of that IRA out throughout your entire life. So stretching that IRA. Starting in 1/1 of 2020, anyone that passes away after that, so the old rules still apply, you're grandfathered in, but if you inherit an account from a non-spouse after 1/1 of 2020, now there's the 10-year rule, where if the individual you inherited the dollars from has already started their required minimum distribution, then you've got to continue that required minimum distribution. The IRS is still formulating those final conclusions and rules on that, but that's how the language is right now. But then the entire account must be withdrawn and emptied by 10 years after the date of death. Therefore, there still could be a required minimum distribution each year, but for the most part, it's being replaced with a 10-year rule where that account needs to be emptied within 10 years. Lots of other nuances and rules that you need to be aware of with inheriting IRA accounts from people that are not your spouse. So I've done lots of videos on that in the past, so make sure you are a subscriber to this channel and you can find those in the playlist as well. But thought I'd just mention that while talking about how inherited IRAs and calculating the RMD and taking the RMD is separate than normal or traditional IRAs. All right, as always, when planning for RMDs, or really how you should aggregate your IRAs, how much you should withhold, which account, which investments you should sell, the strategy with required minimum distributions is something you should be working on with your CFP. If you don't have a CFP on your team, you can contact one on my team. Find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with K, wisemoneyshow.com. You can find us there as well, or give us a call, 574-247-5898. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.